And again, welcome. There we go. And I'm not, I'm trying to monitor the chat box as well, but if Tanika, Rachel, and Jenna, y'all could help me with that, that would be wonderful. I am actually going to let y'all introduce yourselves a little bit longer. I just have to send one of our chairs the link. So give me just a minute. She's our education chair. Okay, appreciate it. All right, so can y'all see the slideshow? And just tell me out loud if you would.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
We're seeing everything. It's not in a presentation view. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm doing that right now. There we go. Okay. All right, so let's first talk about our conference in January. The conference is going to be called Supporting Pumping Parents, and it'll be on Friday, January 26th and Saturday, January 27th at the Tides Hotel at Folly Beach. Breakfast and lunch will be provided on both days. We're going to have, it should be a ton of fun. We're going to have an auction on Friday night, a live auction, which should be fun. The rooms at the Tides are all ocean facing. So even in January, the beach can be fun. Here's our agenda. It's not completely set in stone as to exactly what time we're doing which talk, but this is fairly close. So we're going to talk about, who's pumping and why they're doing it, have a military perspective on pumping, talk about milk quality when we're pumping versus breastfeeding directly. We're going to have a multidisciplinary team of PTs, SLPs, and I actually put IBCLC there instead of PT. So, but that's supposed to be PT there to come and talk to us, and we can ask questions about how we all work together as a team to support infant feeding skills. We'll have a talk about WIC pump utilization. We'll get to put our hands on some WIC pumps. There's a whole bunch of WIC pumps that people have access to now. And then we'll have a parent panel about how we can actually help parents. What do parents really want? And then we're going to be talking about care coordination for infants in neonatal intensive care, really talking about how we can, how MUSC and WIC have worked to get pumps to mothers of NICU babies faster. So that'll be Friday. On Saturday, we're going to have Jeanette from COM, and she is a speaker from Massachusetts. She is an expert in flange fitting, which I feel, I do this a lot, and I always find a little bit challenging to get that right fit for parents. So she's going to come and help us more with that. We're going to also, she's going to have some pumps. We're going to talk about different pumps with her and optimizing pumping for parents, including parents in the NICU. So that should be a really great day. We have some flyers available. So if you would like to email some flyers, if you would like to distribute them, we have color flyers and also flyers in black and white, depending on what you would want. So let me know. And my email address is scbcchair@gmail.com. That's on the website. So you can just go to scbreastfeeds.com and find that. And I can send you some flyers to give out. We are having our event is like available on Eventbrite, just like we do for our normal meetings. There are sponsorships available. Some of them include a vendor table, and some of them include a ticket. So look at those. We definitely would appreciate sponsorship if that's something that you or your organization could do. And then we do have vendor tables for $200 a piece. Now, this is a picture of the tides and the room that the vendor tables will be in. So it's overlooking the ocean. The tables won't be set up like that, though. We have 3 spaces reserved at the tides. One for the vendor tables, one for the conference content, and then we also have a rock and rest room. So we of course want professionals to come, but we also want to make sure that the conference is open to parents as well. And people who have babies in arms have somewhere that they can go and just kind of chill out for a minute if they need to. Of course, babies in arms don't have to go there to breastfeed. Everybody knows that. So we would love for representatives from support groups in the area in South Carolina and surrounding states to come as well. So, and often in support groups, there's babies come with. So, but even if you are, babies are welcome. The sponsorships and the vendor tables are available at our website store. So scbreastfeeds.org, you can go to the website store and grab a vendor table or grab a sponsorship. So to talk about our, what we're doing in Coalition, we have put a lot into our website. We do get quite a few visits every month. It does seem to be serving parents who are looking for information specifically on their rights for breastfeeding. That seems to be our most popular page. And we also have had our website improved by one of our members, Nicole Vasquez, as well as our an intern over the summer, Mezara Rocha. And so you will now find Spanish pages on our website, which we're pretty excited about. There's the store, and then also we post all our content as well as much as possible on YouTube, so that if you miss part of the meeting, you can come back and watch it, and then also let other people know the content's up there. So maybe they wanted to come today and they couldn't, that there is content there for them to watch. We are, as Rachel mentioned, she is retiring after 20 years of service to the Coalition, and we're looking for a replacement treasurer. We're also looking for a secretary and an advocacy chair. So if anybody is interested in that, hey, we always need hands on deck. Anyone wants to help with the conference organization, or that long-term help of working on some of these projects we're doing, please reach out and let us know. So today we are announcing the winner for our Sharon Spriggs Award. And I'm just going to read a little bit about this award. The award was originally called the Golden Ribbon Award, as breastfeeding is the gold standard of infant feeding. Our loyal and amazing Coalition member, Sharon Spriggs, passed away in 2009, and it was decided by the group to rename it in her honor. Sharon was faithful in attending almost every meeting and served as the historian. In her quiet yet determined way, Sharon influenced many of us in the breastfeeding field in South Carolina. When she wasn't involved with Coalition work, Sharon was the breastfeeding coordinator for the Low Country WIC program and was very instrumental in establishing the peer counseling program, which we all know is so important. Sorry, I just had to admit a couple of people. The award is given to someone in South Carolina who has gone above and beyond in protecting, promoting, and encouraging breastfeeding. The candidates are voted on by the members of the steering committee and announced each October. Nominations are accepted through the August quarterly meeting through the online application on the site. So next year, if you all have someone to nominate, make sure you get there to nominate so that the committee has time to decide on who the awardee should be. So this year, our awardee of 2023 is Naomi Hambleton. So Naomi, say hi so your picture comes to your face comes to the front when we're talking.
Hi, thank you so much. This is just such an honor. And, I volunteered with the coalition for 10 years. And
oh, wait, I'm going to do your introduction. I just wanted your face to be up on the
I just want to
screen.
say I love that I get to be on the other side of the fence. Yeah.
Naomi Hambleton has a bachelor's and a master's plus an IBCLC, and she's a mother to 3 breastfed children born in 2002, 2005, and 2009. She grew up in New York and has lived in the Charleston area since 2008. And her BA's in women's studies and MA in education. She's been an IBCLC since 2015. Naomi's volunteered on the South Carolina Breastfeeding Coalition's steering committee for 10 years in the roles of community liaison, social media, and advocacy roles. Naomi enjoyed attending the U.S. Breastfeeding Committee while serving on the coalition, planning conferences and meeting speakers, networking, and learning a great deal in those roles. She's volunteered with the La Leche League in New York, Pennsylvania, and South Carolina for 19 years and has been an official group leader since 2006. Naomi started a Dads 2 event in Pennsylvania and became a professional liaison for leaders in South Carolina, was equity advocate for SC leaders, and continues to post on social media, planned baby fairs, has been a speaker for health and educational organizations, and co-hosted latch-ons, nurse-ins, and fundraising events. Her La Leche League of the Low Country group is open to parents, partners, and children of all ages, and Naomi has trained about 15 leaders to volunteer. And training a leader is no small project. So that is just an amazing amount of breastfeeding expertise that she has helped pass on to the community. She has volunteered with South Carolina Breastfeeding Friendly Child Care Designation Review Committee, baby friendly hospital programs, and in the field of domestic violence. Naomi has worked as a pre-K assessor for preschool climate of healthy interactions for learning and development. She's also currently a special education teacher in an elementary classroom for students with autism spectrum disorder. As a lactation consultant, Naomi has worked to inform and specialize herself in the fields of children's milestones, tongue tie, reflux, sensory challenges, normal sleep biology, and milk supply solutions. Infant sleep, infant mental health, and milestones are passions for her. Naomi has been a guest speaker on the topics as breastfeeding and sensory integration, tongue tie, milk supply, and galactogs, and most recently spoke for South Carolina Breastfeeding Coalition on the interdependence of sleep and infant feeding this past spring. And that is available on YouTube. So you guys can go and watch that. It's not too late. And it's really interesting. It's got a lot of good developmental information in there. Naomi's Low Country lactation practice is A to Z lactation, where she continues to do in-home consultations, virtual consultations, and teaches prenatal preparation for lactation courses. Naomi feels honored to be a part of so many families' lives and supports nursing dyads from birth through weaning with their goals. So my personal recollection of Naomi is when I also started with Little H League a long time ago when my kids were little. My last one was born in 2005. And when I was involved with Little H League, Naomi was the professional liaison about the time that I was writing the newsletter for the coalition. And I just always remember hearing about Naomi, even back then. She was just a mover and a shaker. So anyhow, Naomi, thanks for your service to Coalition and to the state and all the many things you have done to support breastfeeding over the years. This award is well deserved. We are sad you're not serving with the coalition this year, but it did give us an opportunity to award this to you, which was a well-deserved opportunity.
I am honored and touched. Thank you so much for this award. I know it means a lot. I've watched some really wonderful people receive this award, so it's really an honor to be on the receiving end. And thank you. I love working in lactation with families, so I really appreciate this.
Well, thank you, Naomi. We know that you'll continue to influence the world of lactation here, our world of lactation here in South Carolina. So just to let you know, these are our other officers who are some of them on the call. I'm on the call. There's Jenna, Rachel, and Tanika. Historian is actually open as well, and secretary. And then we've got Lanice, who is in charge of a membership, Romaine, who is our wonderful social media chair. She posts all our Facebook stuff. So, and she does a great job with that. And then Ellen Babb, who is our fundraising chair. So, and Sarah Glenn I hope she got on the call here. Let me make sure. She's our new education chair and has really jumped in to help and do a bunch of stuff, especially with the conference. So she's been doing that. And I meant to put her picture here before in the education chair before the meeting, but I'm afraid to say that I forgot. So Sarah, are you on the call?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have your camera on so everybody can see you?
Yep.
Okay, good. I'm sorry I forgot to put your picture there.
It's
So,
okay.
So we're trying something a little bit different this meeting. We're going to actually start with a video that we feel is really great to learn. In our state, we want to try and make sure that our lactation providers reflect the population. And, I think that, at this time we could probably agree that in many cases that is not true. In many areas of the state, that's not true. So we have a little video here to watch. It's called Big Ship Turning. And Jenna, I can't remember which state it is that put this out. Jenna, are you there?
Yes. So I'm not sure. She'll mention in the beginning. I watched several of them, so I'm really not sure which one this one was. But it is really good, and she explains just the culture of feeding African American babies. So it's really neat to see the urban area as well. So just looking at it as a whole.
So we're going to start with this video, and then we're going to kind of do a little journal clubbing. So that is, I'm going to actually stop sharing that. So that is something that we have kind of tossed around, the idea of having a journal club. I put it on the website a couple of times. So I brought an article today, and I'm just going to kind of summarize it, put up a few pictures, the graphics from the article, and we can talk about it a little bit. And then we're going to follow up that with our our speaker, Petrichor Neelan Campbell, who's going to join us at 1:30. And she's going to talk more about increasing diversity in the lactation field and building expertise in lactation. So, Jenna, do you, I guess I can just hit the arrow button here, right? Is that, or
Right. So you'll
Okay.
be sharing and then just hit the play button.
Thank you, Danae, and thank you to the United States Breastfeeding Committee for inviting me to do a presentation on our work and efforts at the Healthy Start Center for Urban Breastfeeding in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Today, I'm going to identify the problems that are related to successfully supporting the Black breastfeeding diet. I will also go over steps to build a lactation ecosystem, assess community attitudes and behaviors, and advance Black lactation professionals. The Healthy Start Center for Urban Breastfeeding has taken the initiative to eliminate the challenges experienced by our target population. By establishing the Center for Urban Breastfeeding, Healthy Start makes breastfeeding information, education, and support directly accessible to women in the community who are most impacted by poor birth outcomes. With our support, this approach can be replicated. Healthy Start Center for Urban Breastfeeding provides free access to certified lactation counselors and international board certified lactation consultants to teach breastfeeding to mothers and mothers-to-be about. We also overcome challenges with individual and group-based education, counseling, and coaching sessions. Through our LATCH program, which stands for the Lactation Assessment, Counseling, and Home Visiting Support Program, Black women in Allegheny County can receive 24/7 on-demand, in-home, and virtual breastfeeding support during their immediate postpartum period. Again, all of these services are offered at no cost. Healthy Start Center for Urban Breastfeeding staffs about 4 contracted certified lactation consultants, and we already have a staff that employs, well, our staff has 29% certified and trained lactation professionals. Some of the initiatives we started to complete this program, again, would be the Latch Support Program, which provides that immediate support for the breastfeeding family. We call it the Latch Line. So we have a phone number dedicated to receiving that support. We also created a breastfeeding bootcamp series that combines a multitude of classes over time for parents to learn more, about what breastfeeding is as a lifestyle choice. All of our classes are culturally relevant to the population that we serve because we understand those unique challenges that can sometimes hinder the success of breastfeeding. Through our high-touch communication methods, we were able to obtain data around breastfeeding practice and duration from our participants. Being as though our program is sort of low touch in nature, since our families are utilizing our services as needed, the best way that we found to connect with them to get that ongoing information about their continuation with breastfeeding, whether or not they're meeting certain milestones such as attending their 6-week checkup visit, returning to work, and the success or failures that may come about that. We instituted a postpartum survey where we send out these beautifully crafted postpartum surveys to our participants at specific intervals of 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 12 weeks, 6 months, and 1 year to obtain data. In addition, we understand the power of utilizing the community's voice and elevating their needs and desires by establishing our Community Infant Feeding Initiative. Our Community Infant Feeding Initiative is a series of focus groups that's designed to obtain information from the community around infant feeding practices to not only formulate better programming to meet our community needs, but also disseminate that information to area community providers and community organizations. In our first inaugural year, we hosted a 2-day regional breastfeeding symposium. The theme of our symposium was breastfed, cultural humility, clinical interventions, and community-based supports. We were able to use keynote speakers, Cami J. Goldhammer, Kimberly Seals Allers, and Dr. Kendall Tackett to convey the message that we intended to share with our audience. In addition, we understand that a lot of these symposiums that are orchestrated or attended are not heavily attended by community members. So we were able to scholarship 20 of our community members to attend our 2-day regional symposium. In our first year, we were able to connect with over 250 enrolled participants. We successfully completed 68 in-home consultations and 58 virtual and telephone support assessments. Our overall attendance for our breastfeeding classes was about 50%. So for us, this was a very successful year, being as though a lot of the people within the year one as well were pregnant and may not have delivered within our 1 year cycle. Sorry. So I want to identify a problem related to the Black woman's unique challenges when meeting breastfeeding goals. What we sometimes look at as general information for all does not really support the needs of Black women due to their unique challenges that they experience. So just to break this down, whenever we are creating programming that supports the general population, we are missing a critical avenue of reaching the Black population. And I'll talk a little bit more to some of these reasons as to why these challenges exist, but what are some things that you can think of now that impact the success of breastfeeding for Black mothers? Some of these unique challenges are related to the lack of familial and social supports. When families are not breastfeeding informed or may not have practiced breastfeeding within their own history of supporting their own child and feeding their own babies, there isn't a lot of family that may be able to support and provide information on the benefits of breastfeeding. Without access to information and education, education sometimes being costly for moms, we're missing, and also information provided in the prenatal period. We sometimes miss conveying the information of what health benefits breastfeeding provides. With an absence of cultural humility amongst health professionals, sometimes women experience hardships in trying to access support or express their concerns related to breastfeeding. So if someone is experiencing pain, but there's a provider that believes that mother has a high pain tolerance, how much support would that person be able to effectively give to that participant? In major cities and most cities throughout the nation, there's a lot of unsupportive employment due to inflexibility. And oftentimes, as we see in our local region, a lot of our moms in this target population are employed in service industry related positions. And so due to their employment within these non-managerial positions, their break times are not as flexible as someone who has an office with a lock on it. Whenever we are also thinking about the social normativity of breastfeeding, social media has been doing a great job in promoting breastfeeding as a normal act. However, the people in the environment around a mom can greatly influence their ability to commit to breastfeeding over long periods of time. What we know about the historical context and ramifications of Black experiences throughout the transatlantic slaves period have greatly influenced the way families view connecting with their young child. When you are a slave that has to return to work and may not be able to devote that much time to nursing your baby, or having that looming note of maybe being transferred or sold into another plantation, those things that went on for 400 years have greatly impacted the way women view breastfeeding and its convenience. Not to mention wet nursing. When wet nursing came about, a lot of families would leave their children at home and provide to them infant formula so that they can obtain money through working in someone else's house. So, the priority wasn't put on their own child. It was put on, providing finances and financial stability for their own families. Lastly, we think about the hypersexualized bodies of Black women. It is most appropriate, as we see on television and through the internet, to show women in the nude, women with scant clothing, but oftentimes a woman breastfeeding her child makes a lot of people uncomfortable. And when we think about this, it truly is a disappointment, especially with knowing the anatomy and physiology of breastfeeding is directly related, to the breast, is directly related to breastfeeding their infants. Identifying another problem. So disparities exist, they are very real. And what we often see with the breastfeeding initiation disparities is the white-Black gap. So whereas white women are starting off substantially higher with breastfeeding versus Black counterparts. And so when you think about the things that you want to do within your own region, it's very helpful to understand the data that surrounds your county or your region. And so you want to think about analyzing what that local data looks like by race, because oftentimes when we look at our races, as we see in this graph here, it appears as though the breastfeeding rate is very successful for Pennsylvania, for Allegheny County. But when we look closer into that breakdown by race, we see that Black women are starting off at the least amount of percentage compared to any other race and ethnicity recorded on this data. So what data can you find that is being collected locally around breastfeeding initiation and duration? And then think about whether or not this data is publicly shared. Oftentimes, in our experiences here in our region, there's not a public availability to the duration rates of breastfeeding. You may have to solicit health network systems and pediatric offices to kind of see what data they have around breastfeeding initiation and duration. Typically, state departments of health may have information related to the racial breakdown and county breakdown of breastfeeding initiation rates, but you may have to try to do a little bit more digging to find duration rates. And this is definitely a problem that can be provided or resolved through efforts that you take up as a lactation professional or other health professional, seeing as if that's a need within your region or county. But another way that you can also understand data in a qualitative aspect is to assess the community and find out what their attitudes and behaviors are. So as I mentioned, we created the Community Infant Feeding Initiative. And the reason why we decided to call it the Community Infant Feeding Initiative is because whenever you put a breastfeeding name to things, you're less likely to receive a diverse response from the community. So we wanted to not only understand infant feeding practices related to breastfeeding, but also infant feeding practice as it relates to infant feeding, well, formula feeding. And why is that? Because, you know, just as we even consider the rates in which families introduce solid foods, you know, that is something that is not subject only to the breastfeeding diet. It can be a issue amongst any infant and what they're receiving, how they're receiving, when they're receiving food, sorry. So ways that you can get to know just get to know what your community feels and what they believe around these things, because not only when you assess what their strengths and weaknesses are and what they know and what they do not know, it also gives you an idea of ways that you can provide education back into your community. So if you see that your community doesn't have enough available resources to support breastfeeding families, that is a void that can potentially be filled. So you, as I mentioned, you can increase the understanding within the community about its strengths and weaknesses, why they exist, and the importance of addressing them. When we elevate the community's voice, we let the community tell its story. We let them think of, you know, the hurdles and challenges that they have with attempting or even committing to breastfeeding. And so what you can ask yourself whenever you're assessing your community is, what can be done better? So after you look at the data that you received and you transcribe it and you analyze it, some of the things that you can ask yourself is, what can be done better? And you can ask yourself now, what can be done better in your community? In addition, when you assess and survey your community, you increase the community engagement. So they pretty much can lead the discussion. They are more willing to jump into the discussion because they feel like they're being heard. And that's the biggest takeaway from this all. You want to make sure that your community is able to speak for themselves. You're also able to complete an inventory of the resources that are currently available and understand what gaps exist. So as I mentioned, you know, when you're able to analyze what's going on in the community, what the community feels, and then you also take inventory of what you notice about the community, you can kind of use that information to leverage, you know, improving that quality of life for community members by creating programming that's specific to the community needs and desires, and also disseminating that research back out to health providers. We also want to provide community organizations with research-informed evidence to assess their service delivery priorities. So there's a lot of community agencies in public health that are centered in public health that create a lot of programming that is supportive of prenatal and postpartum families. So this information that you gather, when you can relay that information to them, they can construct programs, or if you yourself are in a community organization, again, this is some way that you can also create programming that is supportive of what the community needs, but you're also able to kind of inform the way the other community organizations around you are also changing their service delivery to accommodate the needs of the community. When data is used to brief strategic planning, you know, breastfeeding is prioritized. Quality programs have, highly successful outcomes, and you also build equitable breastfeeding practices. What we were able to do is also initiate a lot of partnerships within communities, community organizations, and providers. So ways that you can assess community attitudes and behaviors, and this is a general list, but I believe there are very unique ways that you can also engage with your community. So hosting focus groups are always great. With focus groups, you typically control the information and, the information that is shared. And you have smaller populations of people to allow time and room for everyone to be able to express themselves. The material is very useful because the material is transcribed and recorded. Oftentimes, you're able to use that information and quote these focus group attendees within grant proposals, within social media, and other avenues. Hosting a town hall discussion is sort of like a focus group, but it allows you to have a larger reach. And generally, you can kind of start off the conversation and maybe have talking points that support the flow of the conversation, but typically these sometimes become group-led discussions that bounce off of various ideas between the people who are attending. Town hall discussions also give you an opportunity to be very educational about who you are, what you intend to do, and about breastfeeding information and awareness. With focus groups, sometimes you don't want to, because it's a more controlled environment, spending so much time educating families can take away from the time that's spent obtaining data. And as always, there's always surveys. They can be very qualitative and quantitative in nature. So you can assess the demographics of breastfeeding between Black or teen moms by understanding, their regular demographics, how long they breastfeed, things of that nature. But then you can also create qualitative surveys that kind of ask participants to share a little bit of their own personal journey or provide some sort of testimony. Surveys are inexpensive. There's a lot of free platforms available where you would be able to set up surveys and distribute them to an email listing. And they can be easy to circulate. You can create bit.ly shortened URL codes. You can constantly put them on social media and reshare them. So they're very easy to circulate. Sometimes what I notice is to increase participation with surveys, you sometimes have to incentivize them. So hosting monthly raffles or something of that nature will support people taking the initiative to complete the survey. It's best to keep surveys as short as possible, but if they tend to be lengthy, you just want to make sure you are informing your potential survey completers to know that. And like I said, I know there are various ways that you can consider reaching your community, but what are some things that you think, in addition to these three pillars, that you would be able to host a community assessment? One of the other issues that we find within the medical profession and, just for the sake of this presentation, the lactation health professional field is the lack of diversity amongst the providers. We know that there are extreme barriers that can impact a person's ability to receive certain certifications or schooling that is based around maternal child health or human lactation. And what we know is, there are a great number of peer supporters who provide support, but just in how we create that pipeline from, having them formally trained with, by a training and exam, and then going on to work and not volunteer their time and services to supporting Black families is where we see a huge void. In your county, and just thinking about what is necessary for breastfeeding families, it is noted that per every 1,000 births, there should be, for every 10,000 births, there should be one lactation professional. So for every 1,000 births, one lactation professional or one IBCLC or CLC within the region. Oftentimes, if you look into data, you'll find that these numbers do not meet or nearly or even exceed what is recommended for lactation support. But then when we break these things down by race, we see even larger gaps. So just for instance, in Allegheny County, where there is a vast number of international board certified lactation counselors, there are currently only 3 Black IBCLCs within the county. When you look at our total number of births, we are averaging over 6,000 births for Black families within our county region. So we are completely understaffed, to say the least, in supporting the Black breastfeeding dyad with providers who also identify as Black. If you are, a lactation provider and you're working with either a community agency or a health network system, it is great to think about ways that you can strengthen the lactation professional base within your agency, and also look to see how that can be diversified. So I ask you, how many lactation professionals of color do you all have for every 1,000 births? So when we think about advancing the Black lactation professional, again, we know that a lot of moms or a lot of women are supporting other women through peer support networks. But having also the higher level breastfeeding or lactation support professional, with a diverse background is also very supportive. When moms receive care from someone who looks like them, it's a visual representation of themselves. There is a huge mistrust in the medical field from Black families. Having someone that looks like you can oftentimes ease your issues of fear or mistrust around receiving care. What we also know is that more likely when participants or clients or patients or families are provided care by Black lactation professionals, and I'm speaking in terms of Black families, they oftentimes spend a lot more time with the Black medical professional and are more open about their challenges and the things that they need. The other thing that happens whenever we diversify the Black lactation profession is the decrease of implicit biases related to vernacular, understanding, and experience. So sometimes there can be issues with understanding, with communication between provider and patient. And oftentimes when there is someone who can directly relate or understand what you're saying, you're more likely to be heard or feel as though you've been heard and listened to. In addition, Black lactation professionals provide culturally responsive care to the families that they service. As we said previously, there are very unique challenges that are present when supporting the Black breastfeeding dyad. And some of these things, whenever programming is created for the general population does not support the cultural aspects of what Black families are experiencing. You know, returning to work oftentimes before 6 weeks due to financial constraints that they may have, or just not having any network of people or knowing anyone that looks like them. You know, when you have a Black lactation professional or a Black lactation professional network, there's oftentimes resources that are created to support these needs of a Black mother. For instance, creating a Black breastfeeding circle. When we think about what we do within this context is it takes more than just having Black professionals within this field, but also how we as providers and how we as institutions and agencies also allow Black lactation professionals to practice. Oh, sorry. And what I mean by that is oftentimes there are scholarships awarded to Black women to complete a certified lactation counselor training course, or scholarships to support international board certified lactation consultant exams, but there oftentimes are not jobs within the markets for these women to then go on and be compensated for the work that they're doing. So not only do you want to advance, have a visual representation of Black women within lactation professionals, you also have to think about that pipeline and how you create workforce for these women. So not making an IBCLC without an RN licensure, not making it so that they have to be an RN to work within a hospital system, or as a community agency, employing certified lactation counselors and not requiring hire the IBCLC in order to do the work, because these people are adequately trained. They're usually passionate about normalizing breastfeeding and supporting other Black moms, and so we just want to make sure that we are supporting them along their way and providing opportunities for them. Lastly, I want to talk about building a lactation ecosystem. There are a multitude of organizations, institutions, sectors that all support the mother and baby. We know we have the social aspects of the mom's peer and familial and social network. We also have childcare providers and employers and clinicians. There are hospital systems, WIC offices. It spans, from the social aspects all the way out into what we look at through government. And so it is important to understand how all of these systems work together, but also build those partnerships within these sectors, because if a mom is only getting adequate support from a community organization, but she is facing challenges when attending community clinics for the pediatric visits, or if the child care center is not allowing the mom to bring pumped milk bags into the agency, there are challenges that these women are experiencing that may not be directly related to the work that you do as a community organization or a hospital system or a clinic system, but within their peer-based supports or childcare agencies. So, as I mentioned, each of these sectors are contributing to the success or failure of the Black breastfeeding diet. So, whenever you are establishing partnerships, there are opportunities for educating, the childcare agencies or maybe hospital systems, or collaborating on building curriculum, or, extending the peer-based support network, or having a social media platform that can be utilized and providing information to these families. But these collaborative efforts, really drive in that continuity of care. The quality of care that moms receive are elevated because everyone is on one cohesive agenda. Not only that, when we think about delivery and availability of lactation support, that also amplifies, because whenever you are establishing these partnerships with these various sectors, you're also letting them know who you are as a resource to the families that they are serving. There can be various transactions rather, between each system. So as I mentioned, if you as a community organization are reaching out to a local hospital system, what are some things that you all can do and collaborate and partner on to support the Black breastfeeding diet? And that would be the same with an individual provider. As an individual provider, is there ways that you can connect with community clinics to provide services or collaborate and partner on some initiative or project? And if community organizations and individual providers are reaching and speaking to childcare agencies, how else can you partner? What can you provide them with some sort of training for their staff? What are some ways that you all see yourselves working collaboratively? So again, when you're building a lactation ecosystem, you want to establish partnerships with various organizations and institutions within your reach. So, you can find out who they are, what they do, when, where, and how. To formalize partnerships, you can draft memorandums of understanding. And this is especially with, like organizations working directly with institutions on, say, creating that breastfeeding module that they use on their site. These memorandums of understanding can really formalize what these partnerships and collaborations look like. In addition, when building a lactation ecosystem, there is a rapid and responsive referral process that can be implemented. So what are some ways that you can do maybe virtual or direct handoffs? How does the community or the hospital reach you for what you do or your service, or then how do you refer back to them for what they do? So you're able to kind of talk about ways that you all can refer within each network, whether you're an individual provider or maybe there's someone who was scoping out childcare agencies. And for instance, in that childcare agency, they asked a question about breastfeeding and said they were interested, but they needed to know more information. That childcare agency can then provide information to that potential client about the work that you are doing. So, really think about ways that you can build a rapid and responsive referral process within this ecosystem. And then what ways do you report back to your partners to keep them informed? So you want to make sure you are also, creating and developing what that follow through looks like. And it can vary because it can be very dependent on which partnerships are, coming together. But when you need to establish some sort of follow through to keep maybe a pediatrician updated or a community agency, you're able to formalize these things within that conversation. I want to also think about how we can take this a little bit further and build collective strategies for improvement. When you are assessing your community or your state or your region, and you're finding out what trends exist, what attitudes exist, what behaviors exist, is there a potential to create some coalitions amongst, that group, whether it's a coalition to directly support the underserved and under-resourced populations, or it's a coalition directly supporting the Black breastfeeding dyad. There are ways you can take any collective strategy further to improve on the work that you're doing, establishing agendas, where you're able to, normalize breastfeeding, or attempt in many ways to increase the breastfeeding initiation rates. Or maybe this is something related to data and dissemination, not having access to concrete data around the Black mom and their breastfeeding durations is also a way that you can, build a collective and create an agenda to work on improving that and building systems that support sharing of knowledge. So essentially, when we're building a lactation ecosystem, we're bridging the gap between community and institution, community and individual provider, community and community. And so you want to always find ways that everyone is working cohesively to support the breastfeeding family, because what we often see are breastfeeding families, breastfeeding support networks are siloed within their respective regions. So I want to thank you for participating or listening to this presentation, and I hope it was informative and helpful in your quest to supporting Black breastfeeding dyads.
Okay, so that we have kind of been talking about these issues for for a while in the coalition. We are still it is definitely a work in progress, and what I really like about this presentation is that it really takes a team. It takes everybody working together to make some of this stuff happen in the state. I'm going to bring up a couple of old pictures and then just bring up a couple of articles before we go to Petricor's talk at 1:30. The first thing that I want to share is something that we shared from our conference in 2022. And it was just a map of the state. So please excuse my slowness in moving from visual, I can't think of what I'm trying to say, but from thing to thing, from tab to tab here. So I'm going to go back to our members. Going back here, let's see. See if it'll go down. I'm going to stop sharing and start sharing again because it seems to be stuck. There we go. Okay. All right. All right, hang on 1 second. I do seem to have my little slideshows stuck here. So I'm going to actually stop sharing that, close it, and then open it again. And I apologize. But every once in a while when you're using Google Drive, things get stuck. Okay, let me see if I can share this again, and maybe I can actually page through it again. Oops, that's actually. Okay, let's see if it will let me view the slideshow, and let me see if it'll let me page through it. Okay.
You should be able to go to the
Okay,
next slide and then share from there.
you can see it now. It just got stuck after that. See how it got stuck?
There you go.
Yeah, now it's working. I had to close out the presentation. I had to close out the Google thing and start it again for it to work. So, okay, so in South Carolina, we are in the lactation, in the Breastfeeding Coalition. We have been kind of looking at what our support looks like more on a county basis. And you know, this presentation we just watched was more of looking at it as a community, and we definitely don't have that data. So probably as fine as we get right now, and maybe there is data I'm not aware of it. So maybe somebody can, you know, say something if they know of some better data. But you know, some of the data that we have is from the CDC, and they look at the initiation by county, and you can see some of our counties, like Marlboro, is 42.7%. Now that was from the 2018 and 2019. I didn't re-up it to see what the new breastfeeding report card said, but really, really low rates of even initiation. And, you know, when we are looking at what we're trying to do is map the support in our state. And when we're putting this mapping project together, what we're finding is that these areas have very little lactation support, and that's where we really need to increase our support. And you can also see, kind of looking at this map here, that those areas tend to be more representative by people from the African American community. So we have definite lack of breastfeeding support in these areas. There's a really interesting paper called Geodemographies of Breastfeeding Support, and here's the journal club part. So I'm going to pull up this paper here, and you guys can give feedback whether or not you like this format and if it's something to do again. But we thought we'd give it a try. So let me just show you this article here. And this was in one of the volume 37 of the Journal of Human Lactation in 2021. Anybody read this article? Yes, no? So this person, Grubasek, has done a couple of other articles, or at least one other article on kind of mapping lactation support. This paper was neat because it actually looked at support groups. So Naomi and I were involved in, and Naomi still is, I no longer am, with the La Leche League. With La Leche League, we both started as La Leche League leaders. Anybody else on the call from La Leche League? I could have sworn I saw maybe Gina McCarty. Are you still involved in La Leche League? I'm calling you out. I don't know anybody else that I recognize. Oh, Sarah Glenn, our ed chair. She's La Leche League. And that's all I know. Right?
And this is Gina. Yes, I am. I still am.
Okay, so there you go. So we know, many of us, like, we got our start in La Leche League. That's how we became passionate about what breastfeeding support. This paper here looks at La Leche League and Breastfeeding USA. Anybody here from Breastfeeding USA? And it talks about their distribution in the U.S. and what and who is being helped by these groups, who's in their sort of catchment area. So if you, let me pull up my article again here. Where'd it go? There it is. Okay. So if you look through at some of these graphics in here, so this represents a catchment area. So what they did in this paper was they took the zip code from the support group and they looked at kind of the primary zip code and then the zip codes around it. And then they kind of plotted that on a map as to where these groups were, right? So, so this is Breastfeeding USA here, where they serve. And you can see, wow, that's not a lot of groups, right? Which is worrying. And I feel like, you know, they missed some. I know there was one, I've met people from the Breastfeeding USA group down here in Charleston. So I feel like it's maybe not completely conclusive or doesn't include everybody. But the other thing that you see if you look at that further in this map is that where these groups are, there are a few that serve diverse areas, but the vast majority of the groups, and if you look at the diversity here, yellow would be not diverse, and down at the very bottom, the darkest color would be very diverse. And so you can see that while there are some groups that reach out to many people, a diverse group of people, the vast majority don't. They did the similar thing here with La Leche League, and you can see here again, you know, with South Carolina, not too much diversity served here. And you can look, let's see, I thought there was also a map of La Leche League in here. Okay, well, actually, this is a map just showing that La Leche League and Breastfeeding USA overlap minimally, right? So that is a good thing because that means that people are more covered. So when we look at diversity in general, both Breastfeeding USA and it says in the text that La Leche League, they don't serve very diverse area groups. Furthermore, you know, Breastfeeding USA overwhelmingly serves communities that are wealthy, white, affluent, and suburban. And, you know, we definitely want to serve everyone, but when we are trying at the moment to plot, to map our resources, breastfeeding resources in the state, and when we go to those resources and look for La Leche League and for other support groups, you know, what I'm thinking that we are going to be finding is that the areas that we really need to serve won't have these groups. And also, we need other groups that are just designed to be more diverse in the state. One of the big problems with volunteer groups or volunteers, like the speaker in the presentation brought up, is that we don't have, is that in order to volunteer, that takes a lot of time. It's hard to do. And if you're struggling to raise a family and pay bills, you work 2 jobs, or, you know, that is a very difficult thing to do. So, you know, filling these needs is likely not going to be something that we can serve only, we can do only in a volunteer capacity. But definitely volunteer networks are part of the support that we need. So, and would anybody else like to talk about that? What their perception of the talk is? Perhaps, any thoughts on this little article that I just presented?
I just want to ask what the B Collective is that Richie Simone Lee mentioned. She said it's there in Charleston. It's exactly what they do.
Only because you ask. Hello. So my name is Simone Lee. I am a co-founder of the B Collective. That stands for the Beloved Early Education and Care Collective. I'm a birth and postpartum doula, CLC, childbirth educator, and we are a birthing and healing justice organization here in the Charleston area. We provide a lot of services, which include lactation services for Black and Brown moms to increase, the breastfeeding rates in this area. We are the state's first and only perinatal safe spot. And we have a lot of resources that we give to our families who attend our events. What else can I say? Yeah, we host breastfeeding meetup groups. We have childbirth education classes once a month. We're having our first birthing and healing justice summit on November 4th. So we are doing the exact work that you guys are talking about for the moms who are in this area.
And, we need to make sure that you guys are on our map, and we have all your information for when we're loading this. We haven't obviously loaded the map up, but that's what we're working on. So when parents go through the website, they can find y'all and they can figure out, they can find resources that are going to help them. So,
well, I tried, and because we don't have a physical location, I was told that we could not be listed.
So we do need to list somewhere to put a map if it's a map. So I need somewhere, some sort of address.
Just to reference what was said earlier, I can just speak from my own personal experience. I'm a mom of 3 children, the oldest of which is 21, the youngest who is 9. La Leche League just was not a good fit for me. I didn't find it inviting. I didn't find people who looked like me. And the consensus from a lot of the other people who are part of our collective and who come to our events, they have the same experience. So, which is one of the reasons why we do the work that we do. And I see Katina's on the call too. She's another one of our doulas with the B Collective. So we are both a part of the same organization.
Right. If you have a way of getting on the map that I can't think of or that we can't think of, we'd be happy to do that, but we need to somehow locate with a pin when we have a location map, right?
We do have a PO box that states Somerville, South Carolina. We're working on getting a physical location. We're predominantly grant funded right now. So we just recently, yesterday, we received word that we received another grant that will probably allow us the opportunity to get a physical location. Because right now we just host at different places that we can find free to low cost space where we can rent, and hosting events is expensive these days. If you've ever have to host an event somewhere. So even if it's our childbirth education class or other events, we have to pay for space. So that's what our main focus is providing the direct service. That's what's most important to us. So finding a physical location has not been that high up there on our list of priorities.
The PO box will work. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Say that again.
Okay.
Let's do the PO box.
Richie, if you want to email me, I can tell you how we do a lot, because I do La Leche League, which is free events. So I do libraries and different things. I can give you a list of places we've tried that are free, as long as you're not selling anything at your event.
No, we're not. So, sometimes we sell shirts and things like that. Like I said, the majority of our funding is grant based, but that covers only so much. So to raise costs to provide services, and with our lending library, which we have a storage facility full of supplies and things that our moms need. we pay for that. So we do sell shirts and things like that, but usually we do not. So if it's something that we would not be able to sell at, then we just won't sell at those particular events.
Well, that is wonderful. And so glad you're doing that work. We'll get you on the map. And we want to add all the lactation consultants, all the providers of lactation care, all the support groups. So let us know all your information. This is not the partner program. It's a different initiative. It's just going to be a map to list everybody, not necessarily in a partner capacity, although this is a coalition. We're trying to build a coalition here. A coalition doesn't have a ton of services in terms of, yes, we want a website of good information. Our main service is information to help direct people and connect people, right? So we need that information from everybody. And then, of course, we do offer our educational stuff. All right, I would like to, sorry, I'm 3 minutes late introducing our next speaker. I'm going to introduce Petrichor Neelan Campbell. Petrichor, you're here, right? I saw you log on before.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, all right, thank you. Petrichor Neelan Campbell is a queer, transgender, and disabled advocate for diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, and belonging. They received their bachelor's in psychology at the University of Maine and have since gone through several different career paths. After having 5 children and seeing just how inequitable the lactation and birth world is, they shifted focus to fighting for equity in these areas. They are the president of the Maine State Breastfeeding Coalition and serve as the DEI-JB Committee Chair. They have been a La Leche League leader since 2018 and serve as the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Coordinator for LLL USA. In these roles, Petrichor has helped develop policies and trainings to bring DEI-JB into the first food field. These include the MSBC DEI-JB policy, the La Leche League USA grievance policy, webinars, and speaking engagements. When Petrichor is not advocating for diversity and inclusion in human milk feeding spaces, they can be found running their custom clothing building, reading cozy graphic novels, doing art, and gaming with their spouse and kids. Welcome, Petrichor. Thank you for agreeing to speak today. We're really excited to have you. And I'm going to go ahead and do you want to share your slides?
Yeah, I can just share my slides. That's fine. I'll just get them
Okay.
up here. Thank you so much for that intro.
Sure.
I'm really happy to be here with you all today, and I really loved hearing a little bit about the Bee Collective. That just sounds absolutely amazing. Let's see. All right. So I thank you all again for being here today. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, and belonging at the Maine State Breastfeeding Coalition. I'm just going to give a little overview of our DEI-JB journey. I do believe I have built some time in at the end of my talk for some questions and comments. I don't have 2 screens, so it's difficult for me to toggle between the meeting and the presentation screen. So I will answer any questions at the end of my talk. So the objectives for today, by the end of the presentation, you will be able to define diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, and belonging, acquire practical insights into how to approach this work with cultural humility, and identify 1 or more strategies that you can implement to create a more inclusive organization or work environment. Conflicts of interest that there may be. I'm a volunteer member of the MSBC Board of Directors. I tried to keep my presentation as unbiased as possible. Obviously, I work to really put MSBC in a positive light. I do offer services as a paid DEI consultant. I do similar paid work to the volunteer work that I do for MSBC. And then MSBC and the South Carolina Breastfeeding Coalition may receive funding from the same or similar sources either now or in the future. So before I get started into what MSBC has done, I wanted to go over what is diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, and belonging. So that way we're all on the same page and you know what we are talking about when we talk about DEI JB. So diversity is the range of human differences, including characteristics, perspectives, and experiences. Diversity is a fact. Everyone is different. Everyone is unique. It's respecting and valuing those differences between people. And diversity is intersectional. And I just want to take a minute here and recognize that the concept of intersectionality was developed by Black women. The term was specifically coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, who was a Black academic. And it was created for Black women to talk about how all their different experiences and identities intersect with one another. And the term has been co-opted by white feminism and white people over time. So people often have more than one culture or community that they identify with, and you can't really separate those identities. They all intertwine and interact with one another. So like I am trans, queer, and disabled, and I can't really separate those three out into individual things. You know, there are a lot of pride events, for example, that are not accessible to people with disabilities. So that's just one small example of how different identities can intersect with one another. Diversity brings new perspectives and lived experiences. It's really important to listen to people with diverse backgrounds that can help us serve families better and reach more people. Remember that emotional labor and lived experiences have inherent value. You want to make sure if you're bringing in a marginalized person to consult on something that you pay them for that labor and the consultation they're giving you that comes from their lived experiences. And you always want to lead with humility. You don't have all the answers to everyone's experiences. You're not going to have the answers to everyone's problems. You may not be the best solution for the issues that they're having. You always want to make sure, like I said, that you're listening to people with different lived experiences. We have a plethora of information at our fingertips. Google is your friend, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. There are so many different creators from so many different backgrounds that you can follow and really learn from their experiences. And to go along with that, a lot of those creators will have links to either donate to their own personal funds or donate to some cause that they stand behind. And if you're getting a lot out of what they're saying, you should, if you can, you should donate to any causes that they might recommend. You also don't want to use people as tokens. Some of you may have heard of tokenism. So oftentimes what will happen with organizations or with companies is that in order to say that they are diverse and they're doing the DEI thing, they will bring in, you know, a Black person or a trans person or a disabled person and say, look, we're good, we're diverse, we are all set. But they don't really actually listen to the person that they have brought in and don't really value their opinions and actually do the work and make changes. So that would be tokenism, when you're using someone just to say that you're doing the DEI thing and you're good. So equity is recognizing that everyone has different needs and experiences and making adjustments based on that to ensure fair treatment. So it's making sure that everyone gets what they need as an individual. It's also actively practicing fairness, impartiality, and justice. Equality does not equal equity. Equality is when everyone gets the same thing, and equity is when everyone gets what they need to succeed. I'm sure a lot of you have seen a slide like this before, an image like this before. Sometimes it's the people watching the baseball game over the fence. But you can see at the top, everyone gets the same bike, but really only one person can use the bike in a comfortable way and actually make it work for them, whereas the other three people can't really use it at all. With equity, though, everyone gets a bike that fits them, so they can all go for a bike ride together. Inclusion is the intentional creation of spaces in which every individual is respected, valued, and supported. So again, if you're just using someone as your token to say that you do the diversity thing, you're not really practicing inclusion because you're not respecting them, you're not valuing them, and you're not supporting them. When you're practicing inclusion, the voices of the impacted communities should really be prioritized, particularly those of marginalized groups. So if you're doing a project where you're trying to increase the number of marginalized lactation consultants in your area, you really want to make sure that people from those communities are being prioritized when you're listening to people. Justice. Repairs relationships by holding those who have done harm accountable. It responds to violence without creating more violence or harm. It engages in harm reduction techniques and creates spaces of healing. And it addresses the origin of harm by transforming systems, structures, and institutions. It's not enough to just deal with the one individual who caused the harm. While that is part of justice, really the broader picture is actually doing the work to transform all the systems and institutions that we have in place that uphold white supremacy. It's really making sure that in doing all this work, we aren't creating more harm when we do it. And if we do create harm, it's really taking a step back, looking at what we've done, and really working to repair the relationship from any harm that we have caused. It's not doubling down if you've made a mistake. It's actually learning from your mistakes. So belonging is the outcome of diversity, equity, and inclusion when done right. So when you've done diversity, you're not using people as tokens, when you're getting everyone what they need, when you're creating those spaces of respect and value, people will start to feel like they actually belong in your organization. They will feel valued. They will trust that their voices will be heard and respected, and it allows them to become fuller participants in the conversation. I can tell you that I have been in organizations where I definitely did not feel like I belonged. And I have been in organizations where I definitely do feel like I belong. And it is definitely, there's a noticeable difference. And in organizations where I don't feel like I belong, I get burnt out really quickly and I tend to leave those organizations. Whereas in the ones that are actually practicing DEI and J, I stay with those organizations longer. I feel respected in those organizations. It makes it a lot easier to participate. So the MSBC DEI JB efforts, past, present, and future. I just wanted to give you a little timeline here. So the Maine State Breastfeeding Coalition was actually first the Maine Breastfeeding Task Force, which was founded in 1990, and it became MSBC in 2017, 2018. We were officially established as a 501c3 in 2018. So when you look at the Maine State Breastfeeding Coalition as an organization, we are actually still a fairly new organization figuring out all the different things that we have to do. In 2019, our strategic plan was started. We hired professionals to come in to help us with that. In 2021, the strategic plan was finished. That's also the year that I was brought on as a board member. I was actually brought on specifically because the president at the time had seen me talking about inclusive language and DEI, and she really wanted me to come on and help with all of the strategic plan DEI goals. And it may seem like tokenism, but I actually do really feel valued and included in MSBC. So for me, that wasn't an issue. In 2021, we formed the DEI JB committee basically as soon as I came on the board, because I felt really passionate about that work and that it really should be at the forefront of everything we do. In 2022, we created the DEI statement and the DEI policy. We updated our mission statement because after doing the DEI statement and policy, we realized that our mission statement really wasn't quite what we wanted it to be. And we also did an initial demographic survey of the people that we serve in our coalition. In 2023, so this year, I created a basic DEI webinar. It's on our YouTube channel. It basically is kind of what I just talked about with you all, what DEI JB is, how it relates to lactation care, and then each of our DEI JB committee members had a slide talking about why it's important to them. We actually have several members from marginalized communities on our committee doing the work. We launched our Equity and Lactation Education Scholarship in August during National Breastfeeding Month, and we have already awarded one scholarship from that. So our DEI JB strategic plan goals. So these are the three that are specifically dealing with DEI in our strategic plan. So increased participation among underrepresented groups at MSBC events and in MSBC leadership. Establish a scholarship fund for lactation training for marginalized individuals, which that one we did this year. And prioritize lactation and birth legislation that supports Maine's marginalized groups. So Maine just passed the Paid Family Leave Act. We're currently working on insurance coverage for donor milk and also insurance coverage for doula services. So those are a few of the legislations that we've been dealing with. And while these are specific goals, we really make sure that all the work we do is done through an equity lens. So the DEI committee is often a part of all the work that all the other committees are doing. Our advocacy committee makes sure to bring anything that they've written up for our congressmen, congresswomen, congresspeople, to make sure that the language is inclusive, to make sure that what they've said looks okay. Our workplace committee is finishing up a workplace toolkit for employees, and before they finalize it and actually send it out, our committee is going to look at what they have written up to make sure that the language is inclusive, to make sure that images are inclusive, so that we're actually making sure to include all the communities that we want to include in what we're doing. So forming the DEI JB committee, like I said, I formed that in 2021. To form the committee, we reached out to our connections that we had. We already had a lot of connections at that point to different organizations and different people. And because other committees had already formed, there were some people, some volunteers who chose to be on the DEI committee instead or in addition to the work that they were already doing for MSBC. And we sent out a call via our newsletter and social media saying, hey, we have a DEI committee forming, fill out this form and someone will be in touch. We do try to make sure that all the DEI committee members have already done some DEI work and or have lived experience as a marginalized person. One thing that we're finding as time goes on is that it feels like people who are not marginalized feel like a DEI committee is not the place for them. When in reality, it very much is, because we need allies who are there to do the work when we get burnt out, when we get tired, when we just don't have the spoons to fight for what we need to fight for. So that's something that I'm really pushing for, is to have more voices that are allies to help us out. Because there are some of us on the committee who are getting burnt out at this point. Even though it is a very inclusive organization, there still is a lot of work to be done throughout the state of Maine. So our DEI JB statement, when I came on, we did not have one yet. So that was our first line of business after we formed the committee. To create our statement, we looked at other organizations, both lactation related and not. Again, Google is your friend. There's a lot of information out there. We decided to actually create two versions of the DEI JB statement. We have a short one and we have a long one. So we use the short statement for materials, and we use the long statement. We'll probably use it in the workplace toolkit because there's more room in that. It's a longer document, a longer packet. But the long statement really and truly encompasses our values as an organization. So the short one, you can actually see on the side here, the Maine State Breastfeeding Coalition, MSBC, is committed to diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and justice in our support of lactation professionals, human milk feeding families, and their communities. So that's the short one. The longer one that we have is that plus MSBC commits to serving all professionals, families, and communities, inclusive of their race, ethnicity, culture, immigration status, national origin, creed, age, sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, family structure, primary language, ability, religion, or socioeconomic status. We can best fulfill our mission of human milk for all babies when our volunteers reflect the diverse families we serve. We seek to address historical disparities in human milk feeding through advocacy and education. MSBC embraces the full spectrum of humanity and commits to serving all professionals, families, and their diverse communities to fulfill our mission of human milk for all Maine babies. We felt it was really important to have that longer statement. A lot of organizations just have kind of the cookie cutter, traditional, we don't discriminate based on, age, sex, race, But we felt that really wasn't right for our organization to just have that as a DEI statement. So updating the mission statement, when we were doing the DEI statement, we also looked at the mission statement and said, hey, this doesn't really fit with what our new DEI statement is, so let's update it. So we updated it. The old statement was the MSBC is a welcoming and broad network of people supporting families who value human milk and lactation. Together, we work to enhance the culture of breastfeeding around the state through professional networking, advocacy, and education. The new statement, there really wasn't a huge change. The MSBC is a welcoming and broad network of people supporting families who value human milk and lactation. Together, we work to enhance the culture of breastfeeding and chest feeding through advocacy, education, and connection. We decided to change the education bit to connection at the end because we really felt that it was important for us to not really just reach the professionals, but also to reach the families and the communities that we're serving through the professionals. And education it felt a little too formal. Connection felt a little friendlier to us, but you can see that there wasn't a huge change between the two. And again, all these changes went through really quickly because the board members at the time were very much on board with everything DEI related. So it made it really easy. it might not be so easy for other organizations and workplaces, and I do want to recognize that. Our DEI-JB policy, it includes our mission statement, our DEI-JB statement, and the goals that we have in our strategic plan for DEI. It lays out education requirements of our board members. So we require all of our board members to attend at least 2 DEI trainings a year and then talk to the DEI committee about those experiences. Right now, because it is a new requirement, it is loosely defined. It can be a webinar, it can be a full, training certificate program. It could be a book that they've read, YouTube that they've watched, or a work-related training if they're working and they have this training at work. Any of those things count as long as they talk to us about it. And it doesn't have to be lactation and birth related either. It can be just general DEI. It also gives families an avenue for complaint. So we recognize that not all lactation professionals are friendly towards all families, which is very much a reality. There are lactation professionals who refuse to serve trans families, or who say, oh yeah, I'll use inclusive language when I'm around my families, but I really don't agree with the whole trans thing. So this policy is on our website. Anyone can get to it. And within that policy, there is a form that families can click on to say, hey, I saw this lactation professional and they harmed me and my family in whatever way. And that complaint doesn't just sit there. We also have a process for dealing with those complaints. If it's a board member or a volunteer of MSBC, we reach out to them. We talk to them about the situation, and it's always anonymous. Families do not have to give us their information because we don't want any more harm to come to the family. So it's always anonymous. We talk to the board member. We offer education. If they take the education, great. We continue to work with them. If they do not take the education, then we remove them as either a board member or volunteer from MSBC. If it's a lactation professional in the field, again, we contact them. There's less we can do, obviously, because we don't govern lactation professionals in the state. But we do offer education, and our DEI committee is always available for any lactation professional to talk to about anything that they may have difficulty with. To create the policy, we looked at various resources, including Bloomerang's DEI policy template, Insparity's What a DEI Policy Should Contain, the American Bar Association DEI and Nonprofit Bylaws, and we also just looked at various organizations' policies that they already had in place, both lactation and birth related and not. That was really helpful to have all those, particularly Bloomerang's DEI policy template was really helpful. Our DEI policy can be found at that link or with that QR code. It's on our website for anyone to access. Creating a resource list. We have a really robust list of DEI related resources on our website. You can find it at that link or the QR code there. We each had resources that we already had because a lot of, we had already been doing this work as individuals. So we already had a large list coming into the committee. Google, again, Google is your friend. I've said it a few times. It is really a great resource. You just want to make sure to thoroughly read each source. Sometimes the source that you find can seem like it's good, and then you read through it and say, I don't know that we really want this on our website. Prioritize sources from underrepresented communities, if you can. And have various types of resources, both paid and free resources. have books on there, have webinars on there, have Instagram pages on there, or TikToks or Facebook pages. And make these resources available not only to the professionals, but to the parents within your network. Anyone can access our DEI resource list on our website. And I'm actually right now in the process of going through and clicking on every single link that's on there to make sure they are all still working. So if you go on there and you find one that's not working, contact me and we'll update it. And not all of our resources are lactation specific. There are different categories that they're broken down into. The DEI webinar that I created in February of 2023, like I said, it's an introduction to DEI JB, how it relates to lactation and why it's important in the field of lactation. It talks about what each of those letters stand for. It talks about why it's important in lactation, but also why it's important for the future of lactation. I talk a little bit about, what the landscape of what the United States is going to look like. It's going to just become more and more diverse. So we really need to do the work to make the lactation field more diverse. I don't know if that is actually a link. I thought I linked it, but I'm not seeing a line underneath it. The QR code is there though, but you can find our YouTube channel on our website. Just mainbreastfeeds.org is our website. So this year in August, we launched the Equity and Lactation Education Scholarship. We recognize that Maine is not a very diverse state. In general, it's very white, very cis, very heterosexual and able-bodied. So it was really important for us to really diversify not only MSBC as an organization, but also the lactation field in general. And I heard in that presentation that you were showing before that it's important to have jobs for people who you have these scholarships for. And in Maine, there is definitely a need for IBCLCs and CLCs. Places are constantly hiring for them. Our hospitals often have either no IBCLC or one IBCLC for a huge hospital. And WIC is always hiring. So there's always spaces for people to get these jobs within our state. But it's a scholarship that's specifically for aspiring or current lactation professionals from marginalized groups to be used for lactation-related education, whether that be, the CLC program or materials for the IBCLC or continuing education for current professionals. Giving Tuesday is the main fundraising source for this right now. Every Giving Tuesday is now going to be our fundraiser for this scholarship. We're hoping to add more fundraisers for it in the future. We created a scoring rubric based on other scoring rubrics, particularly the Massachusetts Breastfeeding Coalition. They had already had an equity scholarship in place for a while. So we talked with them to see what their scoring rubric looked like and created one based off of that. Our current goal is to give out 2 $500 scholarships a year and increase that as funding increases. Last year was the first Giving Tuesday we did to raise funds for it. So obviously the goal is to have funds increase so we can do more scholarships every year. And like I said, we did just award our first $500 scholarship. So that was pretty exciting for us. We did do a demographic survey. We're actually would like to do another one here, but it was sent out to newsletter subscribers and shared on social media or sent out to any connections that we had that, for whatever reason, they're not subscribers and not on social media. What it showed us was kind of things we really already knew, was that we mainly reached white, cisgender, heterosexual, and able-bodied women. We mainly reached people with more financial stability, and we mainly reached people in more urban parts of the state. So we knew that already. What it really showed us is definitely who we are not serving. Clearly, diversity is an issue. And when we talk about diversity in Maine, we're talking about not just like racial diversity, gender diversity, all those things. We're also talking about geographic diversity. In Maine, I don't know if any of you have ever been here, but most of our population is within the southern part of the state. Where I live, I'm kind of in the middle of the state. And once you get to my area, that's kind of where the population kind of drops off and it becomes much more rural. It becomes much harder to reach families and communities in the northern part of the state. So most of the lactation professionals are actually in the southern part of the state where, where the cities are. There are very few in the northern part of the state. So that is really a goal, is to create more diversity of lactation professionals throughout the state. Outreach is really important for our committee. We're always trying to make connections with underrepresented communities. A few organizations that we have connections with are the Maine Immigrant Rights Coalition, Maine Transnet, which is our transgender organization, Equality Maine, which is our LGBTQ organization, Birth Roots, which is a Black-led organization, and Wabanaki Health Services, which is they serve our Indigenous population. We have a huge long list of organizations that we have connections with. When reaching out to connect to all the organizations within your state and community, you should be going into that organization and community asking them what they need from you, not going in and saying, hey, I have these services, I can help you with this. You need to be asking them what they need from you. And that's where humility comes in again, is, having that knowledge that you aren't necessarily going to be the answer for that community. And you may go in and ask that question, and they may have a huge long list of needs, things that they need from you, or they may not want your help at all. And both or anything in between should be respected. If they say, no, we don't want your help, you leave it at that. And either leave it open for them to connect with you when they may want to, or just leave it. Again, humility is really important in this work. One part of our outreach that we do, this picture is from our Patchwork of Parenthood event, which is our main fundraising event for the year. And we get people from all different backgrounds apply to be storytellers. They tell, I think it's a 3 to 5 minute story of parenting. It can be any parenting story that they want to tell. Some of them are funny, some of them are heart-wrenching, and everything in between. But it's a really great event. We get a lot of people from a lot of different organizations and communities who come to it. So what the future holds for MSBC. Continued outreach, particularly we would like to participate more in community health fairs or other events. I use the example of Pride. June is filled with Pride months everywhere, and MSBC has never been to any Pride event. So that is definitely one of my goals for next year, is to get us participating in more of these community fairs. And that way we're not going into a community and saying, hey, this is us, this is what we're about. We're being invited and given a space in an event that they are putting on. Community baby showers would be another goal of ours. I know they're becoming really popular in a lot of different states. Coalition-wide DEI JB book club is something that we're trying to get started up within the next few months here. Part of our work on the DEI committee is that we all read a book together, and we set aside time at each of our DEI meetings to discuss a couple chapters. And so our goal is that once we finish a book, we bring it to the coalition and have a coalition-wide DEI book club where we can all discuss the feelings that came up when reading those books and any ideas that may have come from those books. The first book that we're going to be doing is If These Ovaries Could Talk, which is by two women who have a podcast of the same name. And it's all about how different LGBTQ families have created their family. Offering family support groups. This is one that has been asked for many, many times by professionals, is for MSBC to actually offer support groups for families, but also support groups for professionals as well. Expanding the equity scholarship, like I said. One of my REACH goals is offering a full cohort with support for CLC or certified breastfeeding specialist training. So that would be essentially, we give full scholarships to a group of people and run a cohort with them, be their support as they're doing the program. I know a couple of coalitions do that now. Massachusetts does that. And they say it's really successful. And that is something that I really, really would like to do at MSBC. And the other thing that we get asked for a lot is connecting mentors and mentees for IBCLC accreditation. But it's really hard to find those mentors for that pathway to do the IBCLC. So that's something that we would like to do. So that is all I have for you. So yes, I did build in time for questions. Thank you to Sarah and the South Carolina Breastfeeding Coalition for having me on today. And thank you all for taking time out of your day to be here. I love coming and talking to different coalitions. I love meeting people from all over the country. If you want to connect with me, my email is there and my LinkedIn is also there. The link should work, and there's also the QR code to my LinkedIn. I'll leave that up for a second, and then I'll stop sharing my screen so I can get any questions that people have.
Hey, Petrichor, do you mind if I copy these? Oh, I don't think I can. Maybe if I can snip it and pop it in the chat, and that will give people a little bit longer to grab it.
Yep.
Just your email and stuff here. I've never tried to snip and put it in a chat before, so this will be a little bit of an experiment.
You might also be able to take it from the PowerPoint slides that I had sent you too.
Yeah, I will do it that because this experiment is not working.
Not working. All right, so I'll stop sharing then.
All right. You can't do that, by the way. You can't snip and then put a snip in the chat. At least I can. So I'll go ahead and snip it out of your PowerPoint. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Petrichor. That was wonderful.
You're welcome.
Hello, can you hear me?
Oops, sorry.
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, my name is Karen. I'm a IBCLC here in Columbia, South Carolina. You mentioned how you felt your inclusion in, I guess, the MSBC was true representation as opposed to tokenism. I was wondering if you could talk about a couple of the characteristics or ways that organizations or individuals can try to build better and true representation that avoids this idea of tokenism when we are trying to just be allies, but we want to avoid this sense of tokenism.
Yeah, that's a great question. So speaking from my personal experience, MSBC, the whole board really listens when I talk or when another marginalized person is talking and speaking up and saying, hey, this needs to be done differently. They actually have like a conversation with us about it. They don't just immediately shut it down or say, well, we'll put that on the table for next time. It is an immediate like discussion of what we are saying. There has actually been a person who stepped down from our board because she didn't like the fact that I was always fighting for inclusion and justice in our organization. So I will admit that that has happened, but the rest of the board was in fully support of me and what the DEI committee was trying to do. A big part of that too is, like I said before, paying any consultants who have come in. Our DEI committee is volunteers, obviously, but any other consultants we have come in, we pay. With our educational webinars, we actually pay, we offer to pay all of our speakers a stipend. And that was something I fought for, was basically saying that if you're bringing in a marginalized person, especially, you need to be paying them for the labor that they're doing. So yeah, I would say that it really is just making the time for conversations when a marginalized person is saying, hey, we need to change this or we need to update this, and not just immediately shutting them down or saying that you need to table the conversation. That for me personally has been a big part of it, is actually feeling like I'm being heard in the organization.
Thank you so much for your experiences and sharing those with us.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Petrichor, what I really liked, I liked all of it, but I really like when you did some of your before and after slides of like what your statements look like before and after. Like, that's really helpful. We did our diversity statement a while ago. I know I emailed you a little bit a while before about, what we could do to improve it. Just some of the stuff that you put in your slides today and in your talk today, that will just really kind of further clarifies what we can do as a coalition to improve. So very much appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome. I find things like that to be helpful as well, which is why I included, both the old and the new. And like I said, I do want to recognize that especially updating things like mission statements are sometimes not as easy as it was for me and my organization. I know that sometimes organizations have to have really big conversations about changing their mission statements because it is such a big part of who they are. But again, like I said before, you really need to be listening to the underrepresented communities you serve. And if their opinion really is valuable to you, then you should be doing the work and changing the things that need changing.
And I think the one of the issues that we have is that, we just still must not be there in terms of like making our website and our offerings diverse and appealing enough, because I feel like we're just not there in having enough diverse members to comment and help us make those changes. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, I definitely hear you. It can be very difficult, simply because, especially if your organization is very much the white cis het organization, it can be hard for those communities, the underrepresented communities, to trust you, really. I know because of some of my experiences in the lactation world with other organizations that I often proceed a lot of things with caution. Like even coming to do this talk today, even though I knew you, Sarah, I still had that concern in the back of my mind is, well, is anybody going to speak up and say that I, as a trans professional, will they say that I don't belong in this space? Is someone going to say something because I'm trans and queer? And even talking at the USBC conference, that worry was in my head as well, is someone going to stand up and say that I don't belong in these spaces? And I'm sure that other marginalized communities feel that way as well. So that is the trust issue is a thing, and the worry of, is harm going to be caused if I'm coming into this organization? So it's really, a protective thing.
We talked about when we were at the USBC committee conference together. Would you mind kind of talking a little bit more about like white allies and how that concept works? You definitely talked about it in your talk. One of the things that was new to me is part of the conference, we were kind of broken into groups. So maybe would you mind explaining how that all worked and a little bit more about that white allies kind of concept?
Yeah, so I mean, being a white ally doesn't mean to just read the books and call yourself good. You really have to be practicing anti-racism, and anti-racism isn't, not racist isn't enough. You have to actually show up. You have to speak up when you see something that is not okay. You have to be willing to put in that work. A lot of people say silence is violence, and that's true. If you're silent when there's something happening, that speaks volumes to marginalized people. And I did not go. You're talking about the identity caucuses that they had at the conference. So I was not at the white allies one. I was at the LGBTQ one. So I don't know what was said in that identity caucus. But I do know at the end of our talk, at the end of our panel, we did, myself and Monica had talked about how we, if someone says something racist, we don't just let it hang there in the air. We do the work as white allies to really step forward and say, hey, that's not okay, what you just said, and really try to give them the education to better themselves. And honestly, not all the people you talk to are going to want that education, and you have to recognize that. But it is really our job to actually do the things and not just read the books.
Right. And really, we need allies for not just white allies, but allies for all different groups, for people who are marginalized, So, so, I'm saying white allies, but I guess I just mean allies.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously that would apply to any sort of group. So like, I need people who are cisgender to be my allies as a transgender person. I need people sometimes, especially where I'm disabled, I really just don't have the energy or the spoons to say anything or to educate when someone is being transphobic. So that would be when an ally would need to step in and say, I'm going to take you aside and we're going to talk about what you're saying or what you're doing, and, have a conversation with them separately away from me so that I don't have to hear what's going on or be exposed to more harm that is happening. And, the same could be said for any LGBTQ, disabled people, neurodivergent, same, it all applies.
Right. Well, Petrichor, does anybody else have any questions, any comments? Sorry, I have a phone ringing in my house. Okay, well, thank you so much, Petrichor. So really appreciate you being here today and sharing your life experience with us. So
yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And if anyone wants to connect on LinkedIn or has any more questions, you feel free to email me. I'm always happy to answer questions, and I have sheets of resources and things that I can send you if you want them.
Perfect. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Anybody have any other questions about any of the other content, about the conference that I can answer? I did see a question about diversity scholarship. It is definitely something that we are thinking about, and Petrichor talked about that too. And we have had discussions about that on steering committee for sure. It's, but we haven't quite been able to get there yet. We do, we are looking ourselves for some grants, but haven't actually applied for any. And, we would love to offer these scholarships. Right now we are in, let's see if we can get the conference paid for mode. So, but again, we do have some sponsorships coming in, and hopefully we're going to be able to take some of those and offer some scholarships. So it's definitely in the works. That's one of the reasons that we're doing the mapping, is because we want to eventually be able to do scholarships in the areas that need the most help. So that's kind of part of the end game of that mapping. So, so Naomi asks, is there a cost for professionals and a cost for parents and volunteers? So right now there's just there's the cost for the people who, for members, and cost for non-members. Truly, it makes sense to do just join as a member and then buy it because it's cheaper to be a member and to buy your ticket. So that's what I would encourage. And membership will be, it's for the calendar year. It's not from when you buy the membership. That's just too much for us to keep track of at this point because we're a smaller organization. Any other questions? Okay, well, we're winding up a little bit early today. We usually go till about 3. But we look forward, we hope everybody can make it to the conference. We would love to see y'all and meet everybody. Would anybody left on the call, but there's still quite a few of us, would anybody like to network for a few minutes? Maybe introduce yourself in person rather than just on the chat, and tell us a little bit more about what you do. And also, would anybody like to join the leadership team? But yes, if you'd like to introduce yourselves, please just hop on.
Okay, Sarah, I'll go. This is Lynn Cook, former co-chair, advocacy chair, and historian of the coalition. I'm in private practice in the Charleston area, as well as full-time job with WIC as the IBCLC for the Low Country. I'm also a Bradley childbirth educator, doula, and infant massage instructor, and I rent symphony pumps.
And Lynn is well known around the Charleston parts for all her work with lactation. So she has been a recipient of the Sharon Spriggs Award before. I can't remember what year it was off the top of my head though.
Me neither, but yes, thank you.
Anybody else want to go?
Hi, I go. My name is Shannon Allen. I'm the State Breastfeeding Peer Council Coordinator for DHEC. I'm fairly new to the position, and I look forward to working with everyone.
Welcome, Shannon. Thank you. Look forward to hopefully meeting you and in person. These online things get old, so it'd be nice to meet everybody in person.
Yes, I look forward to seeing you all in January.
Oh, perfect. That's wonderful. I'm going to start calling people out. I know. I'm just kidding. I wouldn't do that, but. All right. It looks like everybody else is Christina asked, is a sign up open for the conference In January. Yes, it is. So what I'm going to do is I will go to I'll show you the web page here. I'm just I'll share my screen here one more time and show you how to get there. So, so there's our home screen. And if you go down here, it does say save the date for the conference. You can hit here, and that's the conference page. So it's conference January-2020. And you can sign up, or it says sign up here, and that will take you to the Eventbrite. So that's where you can sign up.
Thank you. I guess I can
Welcome.
introduce myself as well. So I'm Christina. I am a lactation consultant, doula, and childbirth educator. I work in person and virtual, but predominantly in person in Charleston, South Carolina, and surrounding areas. And I have gotten actually lots of input from a lot of people in this group because I have a micro preemie. And yeah, I'm really grateful for the coalition and a lot of people that are on this call because I've had to ask a lot of advice. Micro preemie was definitely not my specialty before giving birth. And so now it's become definitely a passion of mine because I've had to do a lot of things out of the ordinary while she was in the NICU, while we were in the NICU, and then outpatient. So I am, hopefully wanting to do something in the community for like micro preemie families, and definitely very involved with like donor groups. We've had to use my breast milk and a lot of donor milk. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me. So if anyone knows anyone that's interested or wants to get involved, I would love to do something small. I know it's a small population, but it's definitely, not enough out there for moms and professionals.
Absolutely. I will completely agree. We need more support groups, more diverse support groups, and we need more professionals out there. One of my frustrations is that has always been that it's so hard to get that continuity of care, especially when you leave the hospital. So we really need to be able to get the word out there, who's out there, and if there aren't people out there in that area, to help train them, to help get them, to enable them to train themselves, basically, to use what we have to help get that out there. So, but yeah, definitely that is, even in Charleston, probably Charleston and Greenville have, maybe Columbia have the largest areas of support, but even in those areas, there's so much support that's lacking. So.
Agreed. Yes, thank you.
Anybody else want to go? Let's see if there's any more questions in the chat. Okay, so could I, Rachel asked, can I post a poster which has a QR code? So let me do this. I'll share one right now on the screen. Let me stop sharing this, and then I'll put a poster on here. Give me just a second. And I can share one of these posters. Again, I think I had it somewhere, but I don't think I had the QR code on it. And if anybody wants to take a picture of the QR code, or just request a flyer for me and I'll send you flyers, but there's the QR code for the conference. So. All right. All right, I'm just gonna check the chat one more time. And if y'all have any questions, reach out, let us know, reach out if you want. We have anything from giant jobs at the coalition to very small jobs. So reach out. We'd love to have everybody who wants to join and be a part of it. So, and thank you all for your attendance today. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for all you do, Sarah.
Thanks, you too, Sarah.
Thank you. This was a great discussion today.
Thank you, everyone. Yes.
Good. Glad to hear it. Glad. Thanks so much. Y'all. Naomi, I'm so glad you could come.
Me too. Thank you so much. I'm really glad because working full time now, and then I'm after this, I did my teaching, then the coalition, and then I'm going off to a client.
Oh, good. I'm glad you're going to go help somebody.
Yeah, me too.
So, good. That's great. Super.
Congratulations again, Naomi.
And I'll get your picture posted on the website soon. I haven't had time yet, but I'll get it done for sure. So,
thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.